Welcome to Half Century Hangout, where different paths lead to the same table. I'm your host, John, joined by my friends and co-hosts, Luke and Chuck. We're three guys who grew up differently but became good friends with a lot to talk about. On this show, we bring our unique perspectives to the table and dive into everything from current events to life's big questions. We might not always see eye to eye, but that's exactly why we're here. To listen, to learn, and change our minds sometimes. So grab a seat and join us for honest conversation, unexpected insights, and a few friendly arguments. This is Half Century Hangout, where different perspectives make for better discussions. Welcome back to Half Century Hangout. We're hanging out here with Chuck and Luke. How are things going this week?
Just getting ready to have a little vacay, a little spring break.
John, do you have anything going on for spring break?
For spring break, I'm going to be spending a lot of time with my family and working at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere necessarily, but I've got a lot of appointments and, just hanging out at home with the family.
So late 50s is maybe a little different than early 50s. So you're just waiting and stacking up those doctor's appointments. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Like, are these so those much. Appointments like
I
Moon River?
That. Well, yes,
I didn't want to know if he was, which one he was going to.
Luke, what I've noticed something about John. I don't know if you've noticed it or not, but when I get a little dig in, he always says thanks.
He
does.
He does.
Thanks so much. Yes, I do. Well,
he just likes to make sure
you got to say thanks, right?
He acknowledges it. That's all. But yes.
It's super fun.
Yeah, definitely. When he said appointments, I was like, I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
And just to tag onto that, I am spending time with my family there too. We're going down, and my daughter and son-in-law live down there. But my wife's down there already, so I'm meeting her down and.
Have to get a few listens of the podcast down there. Huh?
Oh yeah, there's a few down there. I'm probably going to take a little bit of our swag with, and I'm going to try to sneak it into my suitcase and give them one down there.
Are you going to the beach?
Oh yeah, I'll be at the beach.
You're going to set up
Key West. I've never done Key West.
Key West, really?
So I'm renting a convertible, and we're going to drive that long 8-mile bridge or whatever it is that goes out
fun.
to the thing.
You should rent a Jeep.
I was thinking about it, but you know what, Chuck? I can't live up to you in that Jeep thing. I can't do it.
That's all right.
I've never been able to live that lifestyle. Although it was pretty cool on St. Patrick's Day. That their insignia with the grill lines.
Yep.
It said beer instead of Jeep. It was kind of funny.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was a pretty cool shirt. But.
Yeah. We're doing some renovation at my house in our bedroom. We're going to tear out a closet and put a new closet in and kind of make it a
little bigger closet or a
little more usable. It's just a lot of wasted space. Yep. We don't have a huge bedroom. And so we want to utilize all the space we can in that spot. And that's what we're going to do. So my wife and I, we've designed a little closet system that we're going to make and be able to make the space worth something.
That is awesome.
I will be thinking about you.
Yes.
With the hammer in your hand.
As you're on the beach.
As I'm on the beach.
Are you going to set up a signing table down there for all the fans that we have to get your autograph?
I wasn't planning on it. I feel like I'd be one of those guys sitting there like at the table, like looking around. People will be like, who's this clown? I'm like, I don't know. Somebody told me I should do this, so here I am. And I'm volunteering on top of it.
Somebody on some podcast told me how to sit on the beach and get my autograph out.
Although it is funny, I didn't till today. I've never really had this conversation. I had a conversation with some other guys, and I was amazed at how many. So how many of us were sitting there? I was at a meeting, and we had 9 guys there.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the 9 guys, like 7 of them won't step foot in the ocean.
What the heck?
Because they're worried about all the sharks and all these things that are in the water that want to come get you.
Wow.
Do they fly in airplanes?
They do.
That just seems weird to me.
That's interesting.
They'd rather fly on an airplane and step in the ocean.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away by it.
Do they swim in lake water?
I don't know if we went that far. I don't know if we did or not. I don't remember.
Can't see the bottom.
Swimming pools.
Yeah, sure. My daughter.
I know they do that, but I don't know.
I've got a daughter-in-law who doesn't like to swim in the lake because of fish, and she might feel the same way about the ocean, but I don't know. I'd have to ask her. Yeah. So, John, what are we talking about today?
Today we're diving into something that shapes our lives in profound ways. Our core values.
All right.
Do you have any core values?
I've got a couple.
All right, there you go. And how those connect to our rituals, habits, and our traditions. And we're also going to talk about how that might shape the culture in our organizations that we work for, that we are a part of, that we maybe lead.
So as I'm sitting here, I'm looking at Luke, and I know what I'm feeling. This is definitely going to be a discussion. You got a guide.
Oh, okay.
So you got some good.
Try it.
You got some good questions for us.
You were telling me to guide. I'm like, dude,
I do have some questions that we can talk about.
I don't know where you were going there, Chuck. I'm like, shit. I mean, I think that some of this probably tags back from episode 1, which was our
Absolutely.
North Stars.
Yeah.
I can see that.
So some of that, is we've come so far since then, though.
So really what we're talking about is instead of saying, oh, this is what I stand for, how do we actually play that out in our life? How do we show people? How do we bring that forward from who we are to the next generation?
Yeah.
Kind of what we talked a little bit about last time. Let's take a look. How do you distinguish between values we generally hold versus values we think we should have?
Well, I think it depends. I truly do. And I think that part of it, as I was kind of trying to think through some stuff today as to what we were going to talk about, how we were going to talk about it, those values that you hold near and dear, whatever that is, whether they're learned, acquired, handed down to you because somebody else that was close to you did and you aspire to it, or however that works, I think that there might be times where you maybe try to adopt or move toward another set of values based on the decisions or the direction of your life, right? I mean, you might change, or you might say you might wind up in a place, whether it's your workplace, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a group of friends, whether it's whatever that is, that might drive some of your values or your rhythms a different direction.
Right.
Maybe not even a different direction, but just a little more focused in this direction as opposed to this direction. So, I mean, just kind of looking at that, I think that for me personally, I think that it's most of my values. I think it's been the opposite way of what you just said, where I think that it's driven me to go where I am now, as opposed to reacting to it, winding up somewhere and then changing my values to meet that. Does that make sense?
I think so. I always like the particulars of conversations like this. And so when I think of, values and how your values or how rhythms maybe help establish your values is maybe the word I'm looking for. I like particulars. And so one of the things that has been my mantra for probably 32 years now, I've been married for 32 years to Jen, my wife.
I was wondering where the 32 years came.
Yep, that's it.
It was very precise.
Yeah, back when, my dad just died in September, but he told a story about his grandpa, I think, who didn't get married till he was 40 years old. And he was married for over 50 years. Somewhere in my brain, I don't know where it came from, but I just decided I want to be married for 75 years. My wife and I, we got married at 19. And so that means we would both need to live happily ever after until we're 94, right? And so some of that's a value for me, is longevity in marriage and seeing kids grandkids, great grandkids, maybe even great grandkids, right? That's a value for me. And the way I live that out is through hopefully trying to, have a successful marriage, which to have a successful marriage, you have to do some things in order to make that, there's got to be forgiveness. There's always work to it. There's going to be different things that you have to, control within yourself, during those rough times. But when things are great, things are great. But when things aren't great, you got to, that's when you got to figure out like really what you're kind of made of. So for me, that's kind of what I'm thinking of when I think, how do my rhythms establish my values? That would be one that I would go to. What about you guys?
Chuck, you talked about really, I think of that as a tradition. You and your marriage tradition, it's kind of traditional to stay married, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And to stay married to that same person over 75 years. That would be a long. I'd be really old if I. But
I'm not commenting on that.
Yeah. Anyway, I think what you just talked about, really, I know you like to say rhythms. A rhythm to me is more of our day to day and how we do things. And so it could be that how you show a happy marriage, or how you show that to the rest of the world and give them a good example of being married for a long time, could be a daily rhythm, but it's also a tradition that you have. And I know that you don't like the word tradition,
right? But
it is a tradition. Another thing you said was family. A lot of our values come from family. I'm curious just to ask, where do you think, Luke, maybe did you get some values from home growing up?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think one of my values has always been learning.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, I don't know who told it to me or if it just kind of came out of wherever, but there was always that little quote in my head that if I didn't learn something today, I wasted time. I didn't do something, that I should have. And I think that a lot of that comes from my family, from growing up. I think my dad really kind of pushed that. My mom for sure did. I mean, she used to teach me things every day, So I do think that was one. And I think that I know this one was from my dad. You guys will laugh at this when I say it. I guess you could call it a value, and I kind of looked it up. I'm not going to lie. I maybe cheated a little bit to make sure, but one of the things that I hold as a core value is competency.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. And it's like, you know what? Maybe you could call it like stay in your lane. You could call it whatever you want to do. But the idea is that for myself, and I've chosen a career path that, first of all, that I enjoyed, okay, but something that I know that I could be competent in, all right? And I know that there's times where the people that I know or the people that are in the area that I'm in, if I know that they're struggling, or I feel it's probably more of me looking at them and going, maybe they're not quite as competent as I would like them to be.
Yeah.
I sometimes struggle with that a little bit, because I don't always want to push my values onto somebody else. It doesn't lessen the importance that I feel them personally, but I don't know that it's always right that I do that. You might have a value that is super important to you that isn't on my list of things, but that doesn't make it less important. Does that make sense?
It does. And for me, as I don't know what that does for John, but for me, I feel like part of my responsibility as a human being is to help others be a better human being.
Okay? Absolutely.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're pushing your values on them. I mean, you might just because you're Chuck, like they look at you, they listen to you, they hear you, and they choose to take a better path in life.
Yeah. And that's exactly
what I mean.
That's exactly where I was going with it. Is I'm going to leverage my influence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that mean I'm pushing it on them, or like, what would you consider pushing your value on someone else?
If you're telling somebody or insinuating a certain way they should feel or a way they should
think. Yeah.
I think that it's a, at least for me. And again, I think that it's everything's personal when it comes to it, is that you can, like we discuss with each other about things, right? We don't always 100% agree, which is fine. But I think that we don't necessarily shove our opinion down your throat and say, well, you're not thinking the right way. Right. Now, if I had said something really dumb or I was going to whatever, I would expect one of you to jump on it and be like, Luke, that's stupid. But
so there is a line.
But I think there is a line. Yeah. But I think too that your actions will help with that. Yeah. I mean, people might look at it. Now, if they choose to be like, hey, you know what? John really is kind. Like, he is a kind person and I never hear him cuss and whatever. And they choose to start doing that in their life, that's okay. And if that was one of John's values, great. But he didn't push that at him. He just acted that way because that's who he is. And they picked up on it and they chose to say, I'd like to be like that. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's just kind of different. I mean, that's just the way I look at it.
And Luke, and I certainly have been influenced by who I grew up with too. My dad, my mom. Learning was huge in our family. My grandma was a teacher. Dad's a teacher. I'm a teacher in education as well. So it has influenced me over time. At certain times, I kind of lost those core values. Does that make sense? Yeah. As I was growing up, you kind of go through some things that I think you maybe lose those core values that you grew up with, that you want to get back to. And as I get older, I see myself, being a lot more cognizant of having those core values. And I think what you're talking about too with not pushing is a value. Yeah. That's a value that we have. And one of the things that I try to do, and I think we can discuss this a little bit too, but how do we influence people by having those values, right, and showing those through the way that we act those values out. I'm married to my wife. I love her. I spend a lot of time with her. People see us having fun together. Yeah. And doing things that married people do. And so how do I influence other people? Or I'm kind or whatever. Whatever it is, I think that our traditions, our rituals, our habits, our rhythms come out by showing those values to other people. And that's how we influence people.
Yeah. So can we name some values and how we live those values out personally?
Sure.
How many do you have?
Well, you mentioned a good one, competence.
I put down a little list because I was just kind of going through it and in my mind and trying to, for me as an old guy, it's like trying to compartmentalize my thoughts sometimes is a little difficult.
Yep.
But one of the things that I think that I would hold as a value is love. Okay.
Sure.
And it's not just, like John, you were just talking about, it's not just the fact that I love my wife and I love to spend time with her and I love to do things with her. It's not just that kind of love, but it's also loving what you do, loving all the people around you, doing things that you love to do. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can use that, but I think that as I've gotten older, that's become more important to me because I think there was some things earlier in my life that I did maybe they were hobbies or maybe they were just activities or things that I did that maybe I just did them because I thought I was supposed to do them, or some of my friends kind of did it. But I've gone away from some of those because I've realized I don't really love doing it that much. You know what I mean? So I think I've gone away from it a little. I think the learner part was a big one for me.
Yeah.
Only because that was it. The other one was, and I believe this is a value as well, is intention. Is that I've tried, and I think that this one has kind of gone a little more as I've gotten older, is that, and I think I learned it from work and from things where we make data-driven decisions, okay? We don't just make a decision at work because we want to make a decision at work. We look at some data, we look at something, and we come up with some sort of something to address that, whatever the thing is, and then look at the data and say, hey, we can affect the data this way.
Right.
I try to live my life that way as well, that I don't just do something just for the heck of it to do it. I'm doing it because I'm going to go do it with my wife, or I want to spend time with you guys, or I'm going to do a podcast because we get to hang out and talk about whatever. Right. And I think that that's important because it kind of lends itself to living with purpose. Yeah. It's intention. I'm not just flying off the whim and doing whatever because,
there's a couple of values that I could say. Integrity, I think, is one of the values that I have. I always try to do things with integrity. And to me, that means trying to do the right thing all the time, whether people are watching or not.
Yeah, that's
always
great
trying to do the
definition.
right thing. I also think that what you're talking about to me is dancing around passion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that word came to my mind.
Passion is a value that I have too. And I think that being passionate about what you do, having passion for who you love, that to me is a value that I try to live out every day. And
I think I group that under love. I think that's kind of the thing.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both.
There's
right?
a slight,
I think
it's a little different.
Yeah, there's a slight nuance to it, but
I think in the way that I was using it, I would say,
I think it has to do with passion, and I think when you approach things with passion, and I don't know, joy, I guess it'd be another one of my values. I approach things from a positive standpoint because I want to be joyful and I want to have passion for what I do.
It's interesting
that you make sense.
It does. And it's interesting, John, when you talk about joy, because I think you and I, we've known each other maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And that's one of the first things I noticed about you is how joyful you are as you do your job. Now, I got this cranky old dude that's next to me in the office. And so I did see his passion.
We don't know who that is. He hears my phone calls, folks.
Might have had a little bit of passion today.
No, but I did notice that about you. And I think those values that you spoke of, integrity, passion, and joy, I think Luke and I can say, we actually see you live those things out.
Sure. And I think the other one that I have that I realize it's a value because I find it important. And I know I've spoken about it before is it's service.
Yeah.
And I just live by it. I whether that's for my friends, for my family, for people, wherever, whatever. It's just, I think it's important because I think that we're here. It takes away the narcissistic component, if you want to say.
Yeah.
It's not just about me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of other people that are sharing the same ground that I'm walking on.
Yeah.
Breathing the same air I'm breathing,
I think if I were to pick a value that I have that I try to live out daily is authenticity. Maybe that's a word. Yeah. Authenticity. To where I don't want to be that person that's fake. It's hard for me to step into a role or a a relationship to where I'm just checking the box. I'm usually going to be all in. Like whenever we talked about doing this podcast, it was like, guys, are we going to talk about it forever or are we going to do it? Let's do it. And we finally did it. I even found myself saying the same words in another situation that we could talk about this forever, but let's just get it done. So let's be authentic and stop faking, whatever we're trying to do. And so I think authenticity is a big thing, which sometimes can get me into trouble, but,
I don't think it would get you into trouble though. Cause I think that, okay, let me reel back on that one. It probably could get you into a situation where, you ruffled somebody's feathers the wrong way or something. But I think in the long run, being authentic and holding that with integrity and doing it and also having a passion for whatever it is that you're talking about is going to come out right in the end.
Yeah.
I think the one thing you just said that kind of hit a nerve if you didn't get that was that it might hurt you. It might be rough. We can't live like that.
Yeah.
We have to be able to, if it's something that we know, something that's right, at least that we feel is right.
Yeah.
At least be strong enough to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to talk about this, but I'm still going to keep an open mind just in case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we do here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
and you know what I thought of when you said authentic?
What?
And I see this in you. You're a truth teller.
Oh.
You tell the truth. And you maybe sometimes that's challenging. And that might be why you think being authentic can get you in trouble. But it's really telling the truth.
Yeah.
And being authentic in how you deal with people. So
I think one of the other ones, and John, you mentioned it earlier. So I'm just going to self-report here. Okay. Is,
please.
Did you learn something, growing up, and did it come from family? Did it come from things? I was taught responsibility from a very young age.
Okay.
I sucked at it. Okay. I mean, I was not the most responsible kid growing up.
Okay.
Even into my early years of,
Adulthood.
Okay. There was a lot of things that I would not put up on the whiteboard under the category of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think that even though it was still in the back of my mind that I wanted to be, and I wanted to live that way and be that way, it took a little while to get there. So I think that value, even though I knew I couldn't quite grasp it with both hands and give it a big hug, it was there. And I think having the right people in your life helps with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You surround yourself with people, and for instance, I met my wife and that helped me a great deal with that because it solidifies the importance of what it is that you're doing, and it helps you get there. And I still struggle with it at times, but it's like, I can tell that I've made progress toward it 100%. But I think that's one, like John, you said, I learned it growing up and my family was around it. And, many would say that especially when we were youngsters, my sister, who's 6 years older than I am, was much more responsible than I was.
Yeah.
And yes, Sarah, I did just say that. I think that it's one of those things that values as they go. I think you said you lost sight of them, sometimes over the years.
I think you do.
But they come back. I don't think they really ever go away.
No.
The picture that came to my mind, you talked about going to the ocean. The picture that came to my mind was, the ebb and flow of the tide.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're more driven by our values than we are at other times.
What came to my mind was you grow with grace, with the grace of others, letting you grow into those values.
Right.
They're there, they're given to you, and you may lose sight of them over time, but you grow into those values through the grace of others.
And I think one of the things that, and it just kind of came into my head again, because sometimes, again, my thoughts are a little all over the place, but when you were talking about, are we pushing our values onto somebody else, right? don't take this the wrong way, but you have a different viewpoint of it because you're also a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a preacher's job.
Yeah.
Right.
It is.
But
A little bit.
I remember very, very vividly growing up in the Lutheran church, and I went to church all the time and all through high school and college. I mean, a lot. And I distinctly remember the difference between the preachers who stuck on the Old Testament and the guys that were in the New Testament, because it was two different things. You had the fire and brimstone of the Old Testament, boom, 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 right? But yet you had the saving message of the New Testament that's like, hey, come on in.
Yeah.
We're here. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I look and what I think of when I think of pushing something onto someone. It's not necessarily always a bad thing, especially if somebody needs to hear it.
Sure.
Because there was times in my life where it's like, Luke,
Absolutely.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you need to change this,
Yeah.
in a hurry.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I'm always a real good person to do that to somebody else because I feel kind of badly about it sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think there's times that I have.
Yeah.
But I just don't
have.
think that, it's not always a comfort zone for me.
We might be coming to the end of this values talk and might be moving on to something else next episode. But what do you think, Chuck?
Yeah. I think we're probably talked this one out, and I'm sure we'll revisit it at times, but I'm super stoked that we got the opportunity to actually express some values and then some of the different rhythms or traditions in our lives that we have looked to and look from to establish those.
Very good. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with us here at Half Century Hangout. I know Luke has a quote for us.
Yes.
Abraham Lincoln,
Ooh, awesome.
even though we're,
Oh.
Go ahead.
I know.
Abraham Lincoln.
It's okay.
He
Abraham
was
Lincoln.
a great guy.
He was. Sorry.
In the end, it's not the years in your life that count. It's the life in your years.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
And I think that directly talks to the values and how you live your life, what you do with the time that you have here, because again, that time, it's kind of like you were saying, you want to do 75 years of marriage. I mean, it's not just about sitting there and staring at the wall for 75 years. It's what you do with it,
Right.
how you do it, and how you go those 75 years and what you make of them.
How you live out those values.
Exactly.
So, hey, thanks for hanging out with us here at Half Century Hangout. We appreciate you listening to us. Make sure that you follow us on your favorite podcast apps and check us out on Facebook, Twitter,
TikTok, Instagram.
Oh, man.
Boy.
All those.
Boy,
All
all those things that I have no
that you
idea
can go
about.
to. Good thing we've got Chuck, isn't it?
That's right.
Hey, thanks again for hanging out with us today.
Peace out.
Peace out. Be good.